The argument started in the evening, when the house was already tired. The sun had gone down over Kisumu, and the walls felt closer than usual. Aking stood near the table, holding her school papers with both hands. Her voice was calm, but her heart was racing. "School fees are due next week," she said softly. "The teacher said I can't stay if it's not paid." Her mother, Beatrice, didn't look up at first. She was sorting vegetables, her movements slow and sharp at the same time. "Every term it's the same story," she replied. "Do you think money grows in this house?" Before Aking could answer, her father, Samuel, cleared his throat. "Your aunt called again," he said. "They say we help you too much. That you are a burden." That word landed heavy. Burden. Aking felt her chest tighten. "I try my best," she said. "I help at home. I study hard." Beatrice finally turned around. Her face was calm. Calm. No anger. No shouting. Just a cold, flat look. Then she said it. "You are not my child." The words didn't sound loud, but they crashed through the room. The air went silent. Even the clock seemed to stop ticking. Aking stared at her mother, waiting for laughter, for correction, for anything. "Mom," she whispered. Beatrice looked away. Samuel said nothing. He didn't defend her. He didn't deny it. In that moment, something inside Aking broke. The house she knew suddenly felt like a stranger's place. Her name felt loose on her skin. Her past, her memories, her love, all of it started shaking. She walked to her room slowly, like the floor might disappear. That night, Aking didn't cry loudly. She just lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying one sentence again and again. "You are not my child." And just like that, her world shifted forever. The house changed the very next morning, like something invisible had moved in during the night. Nothing was broken. Nothing was loud. But everything felt wrong. Aking noticed it the moment she woke up. The air felt colder, even though the weather was the same. She came out of her room slowly, hoping maybe she had imagined everything. Hoping her mother would greet her the way she always used to. "Wake up, you'll be late," or "Did you sleep well?" But Beatrice was already busy, her back turned, sweeping the floor with hard strokes. When Aking said, "Good morning, Mom," the broom did not stop. There was no answer. At breakfast, Aking sat at the table and waited. 1 plate, 2 plates, 3 plates. Her father's. Her mother's. Nothing was placed in front of her. She stared at the empty space, then quietly said, "Maybe you forgot mine." Beatrice didn't look up. "Eat later," she said flatly. Later never came. Her father, Samuel, sat there chewing slowly, eyes fixed on his food. Aking searched his face for help, for a sign, for even a small nod that said, "I see you." He swallowed, wiped his mouth, and stood up without a word. The chair made a loud sound as he pushed it back. That sound hurt more than shouting would have. Throughout the day, Aking tried to act normal. She washed clothes. She cleaned the dishes. She kept thinking if she behaved well, if she stayed small and quiet, things would go back to the way they were. But every time she entered a room, her mother found a reason to leave. If Aking stood near the window, Beatrice suddenly needed something outside. If Aking sat in the living room, Beatrice went to the kitchen. No eye contact. No words. Just distance. By evening, hunger had turned into a dull pain in her stomach. She asked softly, "Is there any food?" Beatrice replied without turning around, "You know where the kitchen is." Aking opened the pot. It was empty. Only the smell of food remained, like a cruel joke. That night, she didn't close her bedroom door. She left it open just a little. She told herself it was because the room was hot. But deep inside she knew the truth. She was waiting for her mother to pass by and stop, waiting for her father to say something, waiting for someone to come and say, "Come eat," or "We need to talk," or even, "I'm sorry." No one came. She lay on her bed listening to the sounds of the house. Her parents talking in low voices, footsteps moving past her door without slowing down, laughter at something on the radio. Sunday came like it always did, dressed in clean clothes and forced smiles. Aking followed her parents to church, walking 2 steps behind them. No one spoke to her on the way. Her mother adjusted her headscarf and greeted neighbors warmly, like nothing in the world was wrong. If someone looked at them, they looked like a normal family. Inside the church, Aking sat quietly on the wooden bench. She kept her hands folded and her eyes down. She could feel people looking at her even before she understood why. During prayers she tried to focus, but her mind kept drifting. She wondered if God had heard what her mother said. She wondered if heaven also believed it. After the service, people gathered outside, laughing and talking. This was the part Aking used to enjoy. Aunties would ask about school. Cousins would joke with her. But that day the circle felt tight and closed. Conversations stopped when she came near. Smiles faded too quickly. She first heard it when she was walking past the women standing near the gate. "That girl," someone whispered, not quietly enough. "She is so ungrateful." Another voice answered, "After everything they've done for her." Aking slowed her steps. Then her mother's voice joined in, calm and sure. "What can I do? She is not blood." Those 3 words hit her harder than the first time. Not blood. Aking felt her ears burn. Her chest felt empty. She wanted to turn around and ask, "Then what am I?" But her feet kept moving. She walked as if she hadn't heard anything, even though every word was carving itself into her heart. Inside the hall where the extended family gathered later, the whispers followed her. She sat on a corner chair while plates of food were passed around. Someone skipped her, pretending not to see her. A cousin leaned toward another and murmured something, then glanced at Aking with curiosity, like she was a rumor with legs. An aunt smiled at her, but it wasn't kind. "You should be thankful," she said lightly. "Some children don't even have homes." Aking nodded. She didn't trust her voice. Her father sat across the room, laughing softly with his brother. He didn't look at her once. That silence hurt more than the whispers. It told her something important. No one was coming to save her. By the time they walked home, Aking understood the rules. Home she was ignored. Outside she was talked about. The story had already been written, and it wasn't hers. In their version she was difficult. She was ungrateful. She was a favor that had stayed too long. That night, she stood in front of the mirror and studied her own face. The same eyes. The same skin. The same breath. But somehow she didn't belong anywhere. She learned something that day. Talking back only gave them more words to twist. Crying only made them stronger. Explaining only made her smaller. Silence, she realized, was safer. So Aking became quiet. She answered when spoken to. She kept her thoughts locked inside. She stopped asking questions that no one wanted to answer. And as the whispers grew louder around her, she learned how to disappear without leaving the room. The rain started in the evening, slow at first, then heavier, like the sky was tired of holding everything in. Aking sat on the edge of her bed, listening to the sound of water hitting the roof. The house was loud with rain but quiet with people. No one spoke to her. No one asked where she was going. It felt like she was already gone. She opened the small bag she had been hiding under her bed. Inside were a few clothes, her school notebook, and the little money she had saved from running errands. Nothing important. Nothing that would be missed. She folded each item carefully, her hands shaking. Every movement felt final, even though no one had told her to leave. She stood up and looked around the room one last time. The cracked wall. The thin mattress. The window that never closed properly. This was the only home she had ever known, and yet it had pushed her out without touching her. In the living room the lights were on. Her mother sat there listening to the radio. Her father was nearby, quiet as always. Aking paused at the door, waiting for something. Question. Command. Even anger would have been enough. No one looked up. Her heart beat faster. She wanted to say goodbye. She wanted to say, "I'm leaving," just to see if anyone would stop her. But one sentence filled her head, louder than the rain outside. "You're not my child." That sentence had already done the throwing out. Words didn't need to follow. She stepped outside. The rain hit her face immediately, cold and sharp. The sky was dark, and the road ahead looked endless. She pulled her bag closer to her chest and started walking. Each step felt heavy, like the ground was asking her to turn back. She didn't. With every step, memories followed her. Her mother braiding her hair when she was younger. Her father teaching her how to carry water without spilling it. She wondered if those moments were real, or if they belonged to someone else's child. The rain soaked her clothes, but she didn't care. The tears on her face mixed with the rain, and no one could tell the difference. She walked past houses where lights were on, where families were eating dinner, laughing, calling each other by name. She felt like a shadow moving between lives she didn't belong to. At one point she stopped under a tree, catching her breath. Her legs ached, her chest burned. Fear finally caught up with her. Where would she sleep? Who would help her? What if the night swallowed her whole? Still she kept walking, because going back meant accepting what had been said. It meant staying where she was invisible. Out here at least the pain was honest. As the road stretched into darkness, Aking realized something painful and powerful at the same time. No one had pushed her out. No one had shouted or slammed a door. She left because the house had already decided she didn't belong. And as she disappeared into the rainy night, the only thing echoing in her mind was the sentence that had erased her. "You're not my child." Nakuru did not welcome Aking with warmth. It welcomed her with noise, dust, and the clear message that no one was waiting for her. She arrived with a tired body, wet shoes, and a small bag that felt heavier than her whole life. In this city she was just another face passing by, and for the first time that was both scary and safe. She found a shared room through a woman she met at the bus stage. The room was small, with thin mattresses placed side by side. 5 girls slept there, all with their own stories and their own silence. No one asked too many questions. Everyone understood that questions cost energy, and energy was needed to survive. During the day, Aking worked at a factory on the edge of town. The shifts were long. The machines were loud. Her hands ached from repeating the same movements again and again. Sometimes the supervisor shouted. Sometimes he didn't even notice her at all. Being invisible became a skill. She learned how to move fast, how to stay quiet, how to work without being seen. She ate when she could. Mostly plain food. Sometimes only tea. Hunger became something she carried with her like another bag on her back. At night, when her body begged for rest, she washed her face, changed clothes, and went to night classes. She sat at the back of the room, eyes open even when her mind felt heavy. Education felt like the only door that wasn't completely closed. There were nights she almost gave up. Nights when her feet burned and her head felt too full. She would lie on her mattress, listening to the breathing of the other girls, staring into the dark. That was when the old sentence returned. "You're not my child." First it hurt every time. It made her chest tight and her throat dry. But slowly something changed. The pain stopped breaking her, started pushing her. She began waking up earlier, working harder, studying longer. Not because anyone told her to, but because no one was coming to rescue her. Every mistake cost her food. Every lazy moment cost her rent. Life became strict and so did she. Aking learned how to budget every coin, how to say no to distractions, how to walk past joy and promise herself she would come back for it later. While others rested, she planned. While others complained, she endured. Pain turned into discipline, and discipline became her quiet power. People around her didn't notice her growth. To them, she was still just the quiet girl from the factory, the one who never talked about family, the one who never asked for favors. But inside something was building. She stopped waiting for love. She stopped waiting for apologies. She stopped hoping someone would suddenly remember her. Living like she didn't exist taught her how to rely on herself. Taught her that survival is not loud. It is waking up again after a hard night. It is choosing to move forward even when no one is watching. In Nakuru, Aking was unseen, but she was no longer lost. She was becoming strong in a way that could not be taken from her. Aking walked into the small clinic in Nakuru, her head heavy with fatigue from the long night shift. The walls smelled faintly of medicine and damp concrete, and the waiting room buzzed with quiet conversations and coughing. She had come for a simple checkup, nothing more. But she didn't know that this visit would shake her world in a way even her mother's words hadn't managed. As she handed over her ID at the counter, an old woman behind the desk looked up. Her eyes widened for just a moment, a flicker of recognition. "Wait," she said, leaning closer. You're familiar. Do I know you?" Aking felt a chill crawl up her spine. I don't think so," she said, though her voice was uneven. The woman shook her head slowly. "No, yes, maybe. You look like someone I knew long ago." Another woman, a very young. She had a child, but her voice dropped almost to a whisper. She could not keep the baby. "You were born there." Aking's hands froze on the counter. She blinked, unsure if she had heard right. Born where?" The woman gestured toward the back office. "I worked at the hospital years ago. I remember a girl about your age now. They said she was a problem child. Her mother, she left." Her mind started spinning. Aking had always felt the emptiness in her family, the constant coldness, the feeling of being not enough. But this was different. It was proof that what she had lived through wasn't just cruelty. It was hiding a truth that no one had dared to tell her. Can I see the records?" Aking asked, her voice shaking. The old woman hesitated. "They're old. Most are probably stored somewhere in the archives. But I can help you look. I can tell you names, dates, the ward you were born in. It's not much, but..." Aking followed her into the back room. Boxes of files towered over them. Dust floated in the shafts of sunlight. The old woman opened one carefully, flipping pages with hands that trembled slightly. And then there it was. Her name, or at least the name she had been given, the date of birth, and another name, a woman she had never met, not her mother, someone else entirely. Her chest felt like it had been hit by a stone. The edges of her reality cracked open. Every question she had ever held back, every whisper of doubt, every time she had wondered why her parents treated her like a stranger, it all came rushing back with a new weight. You're not who they said you were," the old woman said gently. "I think you need to know the truth. It's not simple. It's not easy. But it's your story." Aking's knees felt weak. She had spent years surviving a house that told her she didn't belong, a life that erased her, and now even her own birth was a secret she had never known. But strangely, in that heavy, shaking moment, a spark of something new appeared, a strange mix of fear, anger, and relief. Her identity, the one her mother had tried to erase, was cracking open, and for the first time in her life, she could see that the pieces of who she was might not be just what she had been told. They could be something she chose to discover. The rain outside tapped on the window, soft and steady. Aking sat down, gripping the edge of the table, letting the truth begin to sink in. The world she thought she knew had changed forever. Aking traveled to Eldoret with a knot in her stomach, clutching the old hospital papers she had finally managed to get from Nakuru. Every mile on the dusty road felt heavier, as if the truth waiting for her there was not just a secret, it was a storm. She didn't know what she would find, only that she needed answers. She had spent years wondering why her mother looked at her with cold eyes, why her father stayed silent, why every word from her family seemed designed to erase her. The small town held echoes of her mother's past, whispers she had never heard until now. A woman who had an affair, a child born in secrecy, a family pressing their shame onto someone else's shoulders. As Aking walked into the faded house where her mother had grown up, she felt fear twist in her chest, the same fear that had kept her silent for so many years. Her mother, Beatrice, had raised her like a mistake, like something to hide. Every cruel word, every sharp glance, every time she was told she didn't belong, it wasn't about Aking. It was about shame, about a life her mother could not face, and the pressure from her family to pretend the child didn't exist. Each harsh sentence, each punishment, had been a shield for her mother, a way to protect herself from the judgment of others. Aking finally met the woman who had helped raise her mother, someone who had seen everything from the beginning. "Your mother, she loved you in her way," the woman said softly, "but she was trapped. They called your birth a shame. They made her afraid, and she passed that fear to you." Aking felt a bitter swell in her chest. For years she had blamed herself, thinking she was not enough. But now she saw the truth. Her mother's cruelty wasn't about her. It was about fear, fear of judgment, fear of losing her place in a family that had no room for a secret child. The story unfolded slowly, The affair, the whispers from relatives, the pressure to hide a life that had started with love but was judged as shameful. Aching listened, silent, her hands trembling. The words stung, each one sharp like glass. And yet, beneath the sting, something shifted. She could see the truth clearly for the first time. Her mother had failed her in love and protection, yes. But the truth freed her. It gave her the power to separate the cruelty from the person, to understand the roots of the pain that had shaped her. She didn't need her mother's approval anymore. She didn't need her father's silence to make sense of herself. She was no longer the child raised as shame. She was her own person, carrying a story that was hers to tell, not theirs to rewrite. Aching left Eldoret that evening with the weight of the truth pressing on her chest, but it felt different now. Heavy, yes, but not crushing. Hurting, yes, but cleansing. The storm inside her had opened a window. She could finally breathe. She could finally see that what had hurt her most could also make her strongest. For the first time in her life, Aching realized, truth hurts, but it also frees. And she was ready to live in that freedom. Aching had spent so many years trying to fit into a life that wasn't meant for her, listening to whispers and cold words, carrying a name that had been used to erase her. But by the time she returned from Eldoret, something inside her had changed. She had the truth, and with it came a strange kind of power. She realized she didn't need anyone's permission to exist, or to build something of her own. She started small. Aching had always been good at organizing things, planning, moving fast. She remembered how she had managed her shifts in Nakuru, how she had stretched every coin, how she had learned to survive without asking for help. Now she turned that skill into opportunity. She rented a small office space in Nakuru and began a logistics business. One desk, one phone, one second-hand computer. Nothing fancy, but it was hers. Her first truck arrived after weeks of saving, negotiating, and sleepless nights. It was old, battered, and noisy, but when she saw it parked outside her office, Aching felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: pride. She touched the side of the truck, ran her fingers over the faded paint, and whispered to herself, "This is mine. I made this happen." The first contract was harder. Clients doubted her, questioned her experience, assumed she couldn't handle it. But she worked harder than anyone else. She called back every lead, checked every schedule, made sure the deliveries were on time every time. When the first shipment reached its destination without a single problem, Aching laughed aloud, the sound echoing in her empty office. It wasn't just success, it was proof that she could build something from nothing, proof that she could stand on her own. As the business grew, something else changed inside her. The questions that had haunted her for years. Who am I? Where do I belong? Began to fade. She stopped asking them. They were useless. What mattered now wasn't who had claimed her or who had abandoned her. What mattered was who she chose to become. Every decision she made, every contract she signed, every truck she bought, became a declaration. Aching Odiambo did not need a root to grow. She could plant herself anywhere, water herself, nurture herself. She could create a life so full and strong that no one's words, no one's past, could shake her. Her office filled with more trucks, more clients, more employees. She hired young women who reminded her of herself, quiet, overlooked, underestimated. She taught them discipline, resilience, and belief. She showed them that survival could become strength, and pain could become power. At night, when she sat alone in her office, she sometimes thought of her mother's words, her father's silence, the years of being unseen. And for the first time, she didn't feel anger or hurt. She felt gratitude for the lessons, for the drive, for the fire those moments had lit inside her. Aching smiled, looking out at the fleet of trucks waiting to move. She had stopped asking who she was. Now, she was busy deciding who she would become. And that decision was hers. Completely, beautifully, unshakably hers. Aching was at the office, going through invoices and schedules when the knock came. It was soft at first, polite, almost hesitant. She didn't expect anyone from her past to appear. Not her mother, not now, not ever. She opened the door slowly, and there she was. Beatrice, thinner, her face pale and drawn, her hair tied loosely, a shadow of the woman who had once ruled Aching's world with cold words. "Mom," Aching said, her voice careful. She didn't step aside to let her in immediately. There was caution in her tone, the kind born from years of survival. Beatrice looked down, her hands wringing nervously. Aching. Her voice faltered. She seemed smaller than the memory Aching carried, smaller than the fear she had once instilled. She coughed softly, covering her mouth, and for the first time, Aching noticed how sick she looked. I need help, Beatrice admitted, almost in a whisper. Her eyes avoided Aching's, glancing at the office, at the papers, at the space that Aching had built for herself. I didn't know who else to come to. I need you. Aching's heart tightened. She remembered the sentence that had erased her for years. The nights she had walked alone, the meals she had missed, the endless silence. And yet, standing in front of her was a woman, frail, afraid, human. She had expected this moment in stories, but reality hit differently. Aching started, then stopped. Words felt heavy. Forgiveness was not something you handed out like coins. Not after years of being erased, ignored, and belittled. Beatrice took a shaky step forward. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said quickly, as if fearing the answer. I only need help. Just for now. Aching studied her mother's face. The sharpness was gone, replaced by vulnerability. The woman who had once commanded fear now looked like a stranger, sick, trembling, unsure. And in that moment, Aching felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not love, not hate, but clarity. She nodded slowly. I can help, she said. Her voice was firm, controlled, but not cold. I will help you. But don't mistake this for anything else. This is not forgiveness. Not yet. You will have to earn that. Maybe you never will. Beatrice's eyes filled with tears, but she did not speak. She simply nodded, relief flooding her features in quiet waves. Aching stepped aside and let her mother in. She guided her to a chair, brought water, checked her temperature. Every movement was careful, deliberate. She had the power now, the choice now. And while the past could not be erased, the present was hers to control. For the first time in years, Aching saw the woman who had hurt her not as a monster, but as a human who had made terrible choices. The sentence, "You are not my child," still echoed in her mind, but now it echoed alongside a new truth. She was not defined by her mother's fear, weakness, or cruelty. She was defined by herself. And in that quiet office, amidst paperwork and invoices, Aching realized she could help without surrendering. She could care without forgetting. And she could live free of the past while it still stood before her. Aching watched her mother carefully, guiding her through the small tasks she could manage, helping her eat, taking her to the clinic, but always keeping a careful distance. She had learned over the years that closeness could be dangerous. She had learned that love could be used to hurt, and she wasn't going to give anyone that power again. She didn't look for apologies, and she didn't pretend the past never happened. There was no dramatic reunion, no emotional hugging scenes, no tears that magically erased years of silence and pain. Aching had grown too much for fairy tales. She was stronger now, and strength didn't need vengeance to prove itself. Helping her mother was a choice, not a surrender. It was her way of being human without being used, of showing compassion without giving away her life. Sometimes, Beatrice looked at her with longing in her eyes, as if hoping for forgiveness that Aching didn't owe her. Sometimes she muttered words of regret. But Aching just listened, quiet, steady, unmoved by the need to be acknowledged. She had learned long ago that validation from someone who once erased you could be optional. Standing in the sunlight that spilled into her office, watching the trucks leave for another day of deliveries, Aching realized the truth of her own life. She had survived the cold, the whispers, the rejection, and the lies. She had built herself from scraps of courage, from lessons carved in pain, from the fire of knowing she would never belong anywhere by someone else's rules. Her mother's sentence, the one that had shaken her world years ago, still echoed in her mind. "You are not my child." But now it sounded different. She said it to protect herself. Aching had believed it, but she had used it too. She had turned it into fuel, into determination, into a life that no one could claim. That sentence broke her once. But it also built her forever. She was never her mother's child. She was always her own.